Within each of us lives a part that never wants to grow up. Carl Jung called it the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child. A timeless archetype that symbolizes our longing for freedom, wonder, and infinite possibility. It is the voice that whispers, there must be more to life than this, and the dreamer inside us who still believes in magic, adventure, and destiny. This inner child is not a flaw, it's a vital force. It fuels our creativity, our hunger to explore, our refusal to settle for a life devoid of meaning. But like all powerful forces in the psyche, it carries both light and shadow. On the surface, the eternal child is radiant, curious, imaginative, bursting with energy. It is the reason we fall in love with ideas, with art, with people who inspire us. It keeps us hopeful, idealistic, and open to new beginnings. Yet when left unexamined or unbalanced, this archetype becomes a trap. It resists structure, rejects responsibility, and fears the limitations that come with adulthood. The same person who dreams of changing the world may also feel paralyzed by the everyday demands of commitment, consistency, and maturity. In that state, life feels like an endless loop of beginnings without follow-through, of inspiration without grounding. Jung didn't suggest that we kill off the eternal child. He knew we needed it, but he warned of the danger in letting it take the wheel. When we live only through the child's lens, constantly chasing novelty, avoiding difficulty, escaping discomfort, we lose the ability to grow. And without growth, even the brightest dream becomes an illusion. The real task is not to silence the eternal child, but to learn how to guide it, to listen to its longing while also building the strength to carry its vision forward. In this balance lies not just emotional health, but the beginning of a life that is both imaginative and meaningful, where the dreams of the child are fulfilled by the courage of the adult. In today's world, the eternal child is more present than ever, not just as an abstract idea, but as a living pattern in the way so many of us live, think, and feel. Look around and you'll see it everywhere. In the friend who jumps from one dream to another but never follows through, in the partner afraid of commitment, in the talented creator who never finishes a project, in the adult who still feels like a teenager inside. We are a generation surrounded by opportunity, yet haunted by restlessness, enchanted by the dream of what life could be, but terrified of what it actually requires. This isn't just a personal crisis, it's a cultural one. We live in an era that glorifies youth, spontaneity, and instant gratification. Social media floods us with curated images of excitement and escape. Advertisements sell us freedom with every click, every scroll. But underneath all this is a deeper psychological pattern, a fear of growing up, not in age but in spirit. We resist limits. We avoid structure. We flee from responsibility not because we are weak, but because we are afraid. Afraid that responsibility will kill our spirit. That maturity means settling for something less than our dreams. But in truth, it's this very fear that leaves us stuck. When we refuse to step into adulthood, we get trapped in a kind of psychological limbo, a life of endless potential that never quite takes shape. The eternal child keeps us dreaming, but it also keeps us waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect passion, the perfect path. And while we wait, life quietly passes us by. Recognizing this archetype in ourselves is not an act of judgment. It's a moment of awakening. Because once we see it, we can begin to ask, what am I really afraid of? What have I been postponing? And most importantly, what would happen if I finally decided to grow, not away from my dreams, but toward them? At the heart of the eternal child lies a powerful psychological conflict, one that shapes the lives of millions in ways they may not even realize. It's the inner tension between the desire for boundless freedom and the undeniable pull of responsibility. On one side, there's the dreamer in us who craves adventure, spontaneity, and the thrill of infinite possibilities. On the other side, there's the adult within who knows that real life demands commitment, consistency, and sacrifice. And so, we are torn, not because we're broken, but because we are human. This conflict doesn't shout, it whispers. It whispers when we hesitate to apply for that job because it might trap us. It whispers when we leave relationships the moment they demand emotional depth. It whispers when we chase new goals without ever finishing the ones we started. Deep down, we fear that by embracing responsibility, we will lose something precious: our sense of wonder, our spark, our freedom. But what if the opposite is true? Carl Jung saw this conflict not as a flaw, but as a gateway to transformation. He believed that freedom without responsibility is hollow, just movement without meaning. True freedom, he argued, is not the ability to escape, but the strength to choose. And responsibility, rather than being a cage, can become the very framework that allows our dreams to flourish. This inner tug-of-war is not meant to be resolved overnight. It's meant to be lived through, questioned, wrestled with. Because in that struggle lies the birth of authenticity. When we finally start running and choose to stay with our fears, our doubts, our unfinished work, we begin to build something real, something lasting. And in that moment, we learn one of life's quietest but deepest truths, that the dreamer and the doer were never enemies. They were always meant to walk together. The eternal child gives us the vision. The adult within gives us the path. Carl Jung, one of the most influential voices in modern psychology, offered a profoundly compassionate solution to the dilemma of the eternal child. Don't kill it, integrate it. In a world that often demands conformity, discipline, and seriousness, many of us are taught to silence the dreamer inside, to suppress our childlike curiosity in favor of practicality. But Jung warned that when we repress this archetype, it doesn't disappear. It simply retreats into the unconscious, where it continues to influence our behavior in destructive, hidden ways. The answer, he said, is not to destroy the eternal child, but to befriend it, to guide it, to harness its wonder and turn it into wisdom. Integration means creating space for both sides of ourselves, the part that longs to dream and the part that's willing to build. It's the process of becoming whole, not by picking one part of our personality over the other, but by learning to hold the tension between them. The eternal child isn't the enemy. Its longing for magic, meaning, and freedom is sacred. But when it dominates our choices, when it flees from structure, avoids hard truths, and sabotages commitment, it holds us back from becoming who we were meant to be. True maturity doesn't mean giving up on our dreams. It means taking responsibility for them. It means waking up each day and showing up for the life we say we want, even when it's hard, even when the excitement fades. Jung believed that only by integrating the eternal child into our adult consciousness could we unlock its true gifts: creativity with direction, passion with purpose, freedom with roots. This integration is the very heart of Jung's idea of individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness. It requires self-awareness, emotional honesty, and courage. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming fully yourself. A self who remembers the dreams of childhood but no longer hides behind them. A self who can play and build, imagine and commit, love and stay. When the child and the adult work together, life becomes not a series of escapes but a grounded and beautiful adventure, one that honors both where we came from and where we're brave enough to go. Every light casts a shadow, and the eternal child, for all its wonder and beauty, beauty is no exception. While it inspires us to dream big and reach for the stars, it also carries with it a darker, quieter presence: the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is made up of the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or are too afraid to face. For those influenced by the eternal child, this shadow often reveals itself through avoidance of responsibility, of discomfort, of failure, of growing up. It can disguise itself as perfectionism, procrastination, or chronic indecision. And the most dangerous part? Most of us don't even know it's there. This shadow shows up when we repeatedly sabotage our own success, when we abandon relationships the moment they require depth, when we chase endless stimulation to avoid the silence where truth lives. It convinces us that responsibility is the enemy, that limits are chains, and that if we surrender to adulthood, we'll lose our joy. But in truth, it's the shadow, not responsibility, that drains us. Because to live in the shadow of the eternal child is to constantly hunger for something more while never finding satisfaction in what is. It's a life of endless beginnings, of dreams deferred, of potential unrealized. Jung believed that the only way to grow is to bring the shadow into the light, and that takes radical self-honesty. It means asking hard questions like, what am I really running from? What am I afraid to face in myself? What wounds from the past have shaped this resistance to commitment or discipline? This isn't about shame, it's about freedom. Because once we become aware of these hidden patterns, we're no longer at their mercy. Journaling, therapy, mindfulness, these aren't just self-help buzzwords. They're tools for seeing the unseen, for bringing the unconscious into the conscious. As Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Facing the shadow doesn't mean losing the eternal child, it means healing it. And in doing so, we step out of a life of avoidance and into one of truth, intention, and deep inner freedom. Understanding the eternal child is only the beginning. True growth begins when we take that awareness and turn it into action. When we stop asking, why am I like this? And start exploring, what can I do with what I now know? Carl Jung emphasized that the process of integration requires more than reflection. It demands courage, commitment, and practical tools that help us navigate the delicate terrain between dreaming and doing. Fortunately, we are not without guidance. There are powerful, time-tested practices that can help us transform the eternal child from a force of avoidance into a wellspring of creativity, depth, and purpose. Journaling is one of the most accessible and transformative tools. It allows us to see our patterns clearly, the things we chase, the things we avoid, and the stories we keep telling ourselves. When we write honestly about our fears, frustrations, and longings, we begin to unearth the unconscious narratives driving our behavior. Questions like, what am I avoiding? What am I afraid will happen if I fully commit? Or, what dream have I put off because I'm scared to fail? Can become doorways to deep self-understanding. Mindfulness is another vital tool. It teaches us to pause, to observe without judgment, and to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. When the eternal child whispers, this is too boring, too hard, too scary, mindfulness gives us the space to choose differently, to stay present rather than escape. It helps us become less reactive and more intentional, turning fleeting emotion into grounded response. And then there are relationships, perhaps the most challenging and revealing mirror of all. The eternal child often fears intimacy because real connection demands vulnerability, honesty, and consistency. But it is through meaningful relationships that we heal. Through showing up for others, we learn how to show up for ourselves. We begin to understand that love isn't about perfection or constant excitement. It's about commitment, growth, and presence. These tools aren't quick fixes. They're lifelong practices, anchors that keep us steady as we walk the path toward integration. With them, we slowly turn awareness into transformation. We begin to live not as fragmented pieces, but as whole, integrated selves, capable of dreaming boldly while also living deeply. In many ways, the modern world is designed to keep us in the mindset of the eternal child. Our culture, particularly in the United States, is built around the glorification of youth, the pursuit of pleasure, and the relentless promise of freedom without responsibility. From advertising to entertainment to social media, we are constantly fed the message that we should be endlessly happy, effortlessly successful, and forever young. But beneath the shiny surface lies a dangerous illusion, one that feeds our longing for escape while quietly undermining our capacity to grow. Social media has become the playground of the eternal child. We scroll through curated snapshots of people living their best lives, chasing adventure, beauty, novelty, and fame. The algorithm rewards impulsivity and spectacle, not substance. It tells us that if life isn't exciting, we must be doing something wrong. And so we chase dopamine hits, likes, comments, quick wins, while avoiding the slow, quiet work of real growth. We compare ourselves not to reality, but to an illusion. We begin to believe that fulfillment should be instant, and that discomfort is a sign of failure, not transformation. This cultural conditioning teaches us to fear adulthood, to equate responsibility with limitation and maturity with mediocrity. But in doing so, it deprives us of the deeper rewards that come from commitment, discipline, and depth. It keeps us floating in a state of perpetual adolescence, where dreams are worshipped but rarely built, and where freedom is mistaken for avoidance. Yet within this cultural trap lies a radical opportunity, the chance to wake up. to recognize how we've been shaped by forces beyond our awareness, and to begin choosing a different path. When we see how society feeds the eternal child, we can stop blaming ourselves for our restlessness and start reclaiming our agency. We can use awareness as a tool of liberation. We can redefine freedom not as the absence of responsibility, but as the power to live with intention. Jung taught that transformation begins with awareness. And in a culture that constantly distracts and seduces us, becoming conscious is a revolutionary act. It's a refusal to stay asleep, a decision to live deliberately. And when we rise above the noise, we don't lose the eternal child, we lead it home. Carl Jung believed that the purpose of